Welcome to Aging in Recovery. I'm Gil Cintron, licensed master social worker and founder of Never Alone Home Care Services, Incorporated.
Today, I'd like to discuss a topic that many of us never expected to face: aging. Now, to be fair, aging is not a completely new topic within the recovery communities. Over the years, I've attended meetings and conversations where aging in recovery was discussed. But more often than not, those discussions focused on aches and pains, chronic illnesses, medications, retirement, or simply getting older. What I rarely heard discussed were the services older adults in recovery were receiving and whether those services were or should be recovery informed. In fact, I don't recall hearing conversations about aging in recovery as a distinct service issue at all. Yet, as more people achieve significant years of recovery and continue living longer lives, these questions become increasingly important. Because for most of us, the focus was never on aging. For years, many of us focused on staying clean and sober, rebuilding our lives, repairing relationships, finding purpose, and protecting our recovery. And for millions of people, recovery continues to transform lives. Many of us rebuilt careers, raised families, purchased homes, and became active members of our communities. Many of us now have significant years of recovery, and we know that the journey continues. The challenges and circumstances may have changed, but part of that journey includes aging. Many of us never spent much time thinking about what recovery would look like at 60, 70, 80, or more years old. We focused our efforts on staying clean, rebuilding our lives, and making it through clean one more day. But today, a growing number of people in recovery are living long enough to experience something previous generations rarely discussed or planned for, and that is aging in recovery. All of my previous videos have been talking about the invisible cohort and the missing services for those aging in recovery. This is not a conversation about those old people. This conversation is about us, those of us who are aging in recovery. We have to begin recognizing that we are the invisible cohort. It's about us finally facing the fact that if we continue living and continue protecting our recovery, we eventually become the older adults we once thought someone else was talking about. That said, this is really a conversation about how we protect our independence, our dignity, our quality of life, and our recovery as we continue to age. And once we begin talking about protecting those things, we inevitably arrive at a very difficult subject, one that I have rarely, if ever, heard discussed in recovery meetings or recovery communities, and that's elder abuse. Now, I realize that some people may already be thinking, what does elder abuse have to do with me? And I understand that reaction. Many of us don't think of ourselves as sick, elderly, or frail. Many of us don't think of ourselves as vulnerable. Many of us survive things most people can't even imagine. Some of us were the tough guys or the tough women. Many of us learn how to survive difficult neighborhoods, difficult families, jails, institutions, loss, death, and addiction. And then we changed our lives through recovery. Because of everything we survived, it can be difficult to see ourselves in conversations about aging, vulnerability, or elder abuse. But aging has a way of changing the realities we face. Not because we become weak or soft, not because we stop being resilient, but because none of us are immune to growing older. At some point, many of us begin relying on others in ways we never expected. Maybe it's transportation. Maybe it's help around the house. Maybe it's assistance after an illness or help managing with our medications. Maybe it's support after a fall, a stroke, or another health condition. And when that happens, the issue is no longer whether we're tough. The issue becomes whether the people around us are trustworthy, whether our dignity is respected, whether our finances are protected, whether our choices are honored, and whether our recovery continues to be supported. All of that raises a question that I have never heard discussed by social workers within recovery communities, at recovery conferences, or in the recovery literature. If elder abuse is a significant issue among older adults in general, and if researchers are increasingly studying older adults with substance abuse disorders, why then have we paid so little attention to whether older adults aging in recovery may also be vulnerable to elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation? Why have we never asked whether there are unique risks facing the population that is aging in recovery? And just as importantly, are there unique protective factors that help safeguard people aging in recovery? The truth is that we simply don't know. And we don't know because very few people have asked that question. That doesn't necessarily mean a problem exists, but it also doesn't mean a problem doesn't exist. It simply means that this may be another issue affecting the invisible cohort that remains largely unexplored. And that is where the conversation about elder abuse and aging in recovery begins. While there is a substantial body of research on elder abuse in general, and a growing body of research on older adults with substance use disorders, there appears to be very little research examining elder abuse among people who themselves are aging in recovery. That absence of research should not be mistaken for the absence of a problem. Rather, it highlights how little attention has been paid to this intersection of aging, recovery, and vulnerability. Elder abuse is generally defined as physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, abandonment, sexual abuse, or financial exploitation of an older adult. Research tells us that elder abuse is significantly underreported. Many older adults never report what is happening to them. Sometimes they are embarrassed. Sometimes they are afraid. And sometimes they depend upon the person who is mistreating them. Often, abuse occurs within relationships of trust. Family members, caregivers, friends, people who have access to an older adult's life, finances, or home. And because there has been so little research on aging and recovery, we simply do not know whether similar concerns exist within recovery communities. For example, we do not know whether sponsors, sponsees, recovery peers, or others within recovery networks ever become involved in situations involving financial exploitation, emotional abuse, neglect, or undue influence. I want to be very, very careful here. I am not suggesting that this is occurring, nor am I suggesting that recovery communities are unsafe. The truth is that we simply do not know because the research has not been done. But if elder abuse often occurs within relationships of trust, then it seems reasonable to ask whether this is an issue that deserves further study among people aging in recovery. The consequences can be devastating. Financial losses, psychological trauma, social isolation, declining health, hospitalizations, and in some cases, premature death. Now let's think about the population aging in recovery. Many people in recovery are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or even older. Many live alone. Many have lost spouses, siblings, friends, sponsors, sponsees, and long-time recovery peers. Many are confronting chronic illness, mobility limitations, transportation challenges, and the realities of aging. Like all other older adults, some of us eventually require assistance, perhaps a home attendant or assisted living, perhaps even a nursing home care. And that raises another important question. Are there unique elder abuse risks facing people aging in recovery? At the moment, we don't know. The research simply hasn't caught up. But within recovery communities, certain concerns come up repeatedly. People talk about aging alone. They talk about financial insecurity. They talk about caregiving needs. They talk about losing social connections. And they talk about complicated family relationships. Another issue that deserves further study involves aging parents in recovery, whose adult children continue to struggle with active substance abuse themselves. I'm not suggesting that every adult child with a substance use disorder abuses or exploits their parents. Nor am I suggesting that people in recovery face greater abuse than other older adults. The evidence simply does not exist. But what we do know is that substance use disorders can place enormous stress on families. And we know from the elder abuse literature that adult children are frequently identified as perpetrators of financial exploitation, emotional abuse, and neglect. When those realities intersect, important questions emerge. What happens when an aging parent in recovery is financially supporting an older adult who continues to struggle with addiction? What happens when that child moves back into the parent's home? What happens when guilt, fear, family loyalty, or old family dynamics make it difficult for the older adult to establish healthy boundaries? These are questions that deserve attention, not assumptions, not conclusions, questions. At the same time, recovery communities may also represent one of the greatest protective factors available to people aging in recovery. And that brings us to another important concept, the concept of recovery capital. I've discussed it in other videos, but I'll discuss it here again briefly. Recovery capital refers to the resources that support long-term recovery. Things like social support, purpose, meaning, spirituality, community engagement, healthy relationships, and coping skills. Many people with decades of recovery possess substantial recovery capital, and that may serve as a protective factor. People who remain connected to recovery communities are often less isolated. They have friends who notice when something is wrong. They have peers who can offer support. They have people who can identify warning signs. They have people who may recognize changes in behavior, finances, health, or living conditions long before a crisis develops. In that sense, recovery itself may help protect older adults from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Which brings me to yet another idea: recovery-informed care. What if caregivers, home attendants, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes understood recovery? What if they recognized the importance of autonomy, dignity, purpose, social connection, and continuity of recovery support? Could recovery-informed care become a form of elder abuse protection? I believe it could. And I believe this is an area worthy of serious discussion and research. The larger point is this: the population aging in recovery is growing, yet many of their needs remain largely invisible. We have aging systems, we have recovery systems, but very few programs intentionally focus on the intersection of aging and long-term recovery. As a result, Many people aging in recovery find themselves living between systems. The absence of research should not be mistaken for the absence of a problem. Sometimes research begins because people start asking questions. Sometimes important issues first emerge through lived experience. And perhaps that is where we are today. As social workers, researchers, policymakers, aging service providers, and members of recovery communities, we should begin asking these questions. We should begin studying these issues. And most importantly, we should begin listening to the voices of older adults aging in recovery. Understanding and protecting this growing population may become one of the most important challenges facing the recovery field in the decades ahead.
Thank you for watching Aging in Recovery. If you found this conversation meaningful, please like, subscribe, and follow the channel. And leave your thoughts and comments below. Let's continue the conversation about aging in recovery, the invisible cohort, recovery-informed care, and the future of long-term recovery in America.